Hello, welcome and welcome back to Bang Bang Book Reviews. I am going to be starting to vlog and blog, not blog, why do I keep saying blog? Under Bang Bang Books. That has been my handle for a very long time, probably like 10 years I've been Bang Bang Books. I still have the podcast, but I will be doing my videos under my name now. So, welcome. I am still Dawn, I am still a librarian, and I am still the criticizer of books. And today we are going to be talking about 4 ARCs that I read in August, and to let you know if they're good or not, so that you don't have to read shitty books, crappy books, because I don't read crappy books. Hold on. That has been personal book motto. I don't read crappy books. I have this hanging on my bookshelf. The first book I read was The Liar's Crown by Abigail Owen, and I DNF'd at like 30%. This is supposedly a very hyped book. The publishers are putting a lot of money and time and effort into this book. It is not great. Obviously, I DNF'd it. I've been hearing a lot of booktubers complain about YA and that they're sick of YA and that they're tired of YA, they don't want to read it anymore, and this will not be the book that is going to change their mind. This is just going to further that opinion. So don't read this book. If you are on the fence about YA, no, don't read this book. This is what's wrong with YA. Just bad writing and a publisher putting all their money into a bad book. Well, there are really good, well-written, thematic, symbolic, great character development, great worlds by other authors that publishers are just not putting any effort behind. So don't waste your time. So this book is about 2 sisters. They are twin sisters. One of them is the heir and one is the spare. And they take the spare away at birth to kind of raise her somewhere else, so that when the queen, when the heir becomes queen and she is put in precarious situations, they can put the heir in there instead of her, just in case she gets kidnapped or killed or something. And so the spare is basically raised to die eventually. And so the time has come for this thing that's supposed to happen where the queen is going to get taken and killed perhaps, and so they stick the spare in there, and the plan is thwarted because the person who was supposed to take her doesn't, somebody else takes her. Okay, so the book starts off really well. Like, the prologue is done really well, and then it all kind of poo-poos after that, because the world is way too big for this author. The world has magic, and then it has just like a normal people, and then it has different countries within an empire, but they're all having their own battles. Like, one country is flooding or something, then another country has no water and there's just sand and people they need water, and then there's another country that has volcanoes, and there's another country, so like they're all dealing with their own elemental stuff, but that's not explained well at all. It's just kind of said and you're like, oh. And then there are different types of magical people. So you know how there's like fire, water, blah blah blah, there's like different categories of magicians. But once again, the book doesn't really explain it. It just says, oh, that's TT over there and she's a mage of fire. Hey girl, what's up? So what'd you do last night? What the fuck does mage of fire mean? What can she do, and why is that important? It just drops it on you and doesn't explain anything. It's like, no, that is not how you build a world. You need to let the reader know the magic system. Problem number 1. Problem number 2 is the main character. I don't know her name. Let's call her Sarah. Sarah is the spare, and she has been taken by this guy, and she totally believes that he is going to kill her because that's legend. While he is kidnapping her with magic, very cool magic by the way, I think he does some shadow magic, while he's kidnapping her, She is constantly commenting on how hot he is. Girl, he about to kill you. And all you can talk about is how piercing and beautiful his eyes are and how great his body probably is under that robe. The entire time. She is just resigned to the fact that he's going to kill her. And while she's trying to get away, because that's what you do, you try to escape, as she's escaping and trying to take off her binds, ooh, he got a nice ass though. Okay. Problem number 3. Not only is there magic, not only is there a battle for the throne, but there are monsters. Monsters. And so they'll be walking along, doo-dee-doo-dee-doo. Oh my God, a big worm. It's called a pee-poo worm. Oh my God, what's a pee-poo worm? It sounds like ladies having orgasms when they mate. And I am not making that up. There is a monster. And of course, the two of them are hiding from the monster. And I don't know, I don't think they're mating. They're just like eating or something. I don't know. But whatever they're doing, it sounds like women having sex. And of course, the two of them are huddled together, trying not to be seen by the monster. And it sounds like sex is going on in the next cave. This is what I'm talking about when I say this is not a good representation of YA, because that is so YA. That is so stereotypical, bad YA. I couldn't take it anymore. I gave up. Next. Shit, I don't know the name of this author. It's Little Eve. I want to say the author is Katona Ward. I'm going to put the name of this woman here. I'm on my phone and I can't look it up. My setup is on top of my computer, so I can't do good reads, so I'm kind of stuck. So this is the author's name and her book. Little Eve is set in Ireland or Scotland. I don't know. One of those. Maybe England. I don't know. And it is about this little religious, let's call them a cult. And they kind of live up on the hill, and it's one of those where people are like, that's where the weirdos live at. And they just kind of walk past the house and just, they go to their school, they see them in town, and they're just like, you know, it's that situation. And it's only like 8 of them. There's the father, who's the leader of the cult. He's got 2 adult women with him and 3 young people, 4 young people. One of them is a mute. And only one is a boy. So there's only one male kid and the father. The rest are women. They homeschool for the most part until the government was like, no. They keep them like in that little house. Only one person goes to town. Like, they're very isolated because they're waiting for basically the second coming. They're waiting for Jesus to come back and to save them, essentially. And the thing that communicates with them is a serpent. That's quite biblical. Meanwhile, I think that's all I can say. The rest is spoilers. Okay. All right. So I gave this a 3.5. Not bad, not great either. And here's why. The main reason is because the author is trying to set a tone of that of Gone Girl. You know how Gone Girl was like, ooh, is she crazy or was she abused? We don't know. And then all of a sudden she just starts whacking people, like killing them off with like knives to the throat, and she crazy. Like, but it has a tone to it where it's like you feel bad for the guy, or is he a murderer? You don't quite know what's going on. A lot of unreliable narrators here. It's very creepy. It's just like has this really dark tone to it, and this book is trying to do that, but it didn't do a good job. So that's all I'm gonna say about that, because I don't want to spoil it. It's a cult. It's a cult, basically. And what fascinates me about cults, and I have a fascination with cults. Any documentary that's on a cult, I'm gonna watch it. And what fascinates me about a cult, and this cult is no exception, is that the world has like, this book was set in the early 20th century maybe, and so the world probably had like 2 billion people on it at this time, maybe a billion, I don't know. Now there's like 7 billion, but back then it wasn't nearly as many people on Earth. And your noodle here is telling you that out of 1 billion people on the Earth, 8 of you know the truth, while the other 99,999,992 billion people are wrong. Okay, that always gets me. Anyway, so the other problem with the book is that the father is the villain because he's the cult leader, he's the manipulator. The little bit that he was in, it was great, but he wasn't in it enough. I feel like he could have played a bigger role in the story and it would have been better, but he wasn't. The other dislike I have is that our main character, Eve, when she was like, because at the beginning of the book, she's just a sycophant, you know, she believes everything father tells her, but she's inquisitive and she reads, and she's not supposed to be reading because knowledge, no. And she asks questions, and of course father doesn't like that and she gets punished. And she wants so very badly for father to accept her. She wants so very badly for people to see her. And so at the beginning of the book, when she's kind of the sycophant, she's very well developed. She was a great character at the beginning of the book. Then at some point, she figures it out. She figures out how to gain father's favor, and she becomes the favorite. And then when she becomes the favorite, then she's less developed. And in turn, she's not as good a character as sycophant Eve. And I didn't like that. I liked sycophant Eve because I thought she was really, she was written really well. She was a very interesting character. But then when she got some power, which should have elevated her as far as development, because now we're seeing what manipulation really does. So now she becomes in turn the father. Instead of recognizing that I'm being abused here, I'm watching father abuse other people. And I don't necessarily like that. But now when it's my chance to be father, I do it too instead of stop it. Like, why do people do that? Like, this author had plenty of opportunity to go into that, but she doesn't really do that. But when she becomes the manipulator, then it's not as well. It's not done as well. So that's really my dislikes. I didn't like the ending. Like I said, the author was doing too much. She was trying too hard to set this tone, and she just didn't do a really good job of it. What I liked was it's a symbolic book, and I love symbolic writing. So there's, once again, serpents, which is biblical. There's a lot of mention of blood and bees and honey. Like, so those are symbolic things that were present in the book. And that is what makes for a critical book, because that's something that you can discuss. It's a deeper meaning. They drink a lot of honey, and that's not by accident. Honey is a symbol. It means something to the book, to the theme, to the story. The whole idea of cult manipulation, once again, I think a lot of people are mesmerized by this. They're intrigued by how people can fall for a cult, how they can just up in their lives, give away all their money, give away all their time to just one person who's saying, well, I'm Jesus. And it's almost always about sex and power. Almost always. Almost always. And people just don't see it. They're always preying on little girls. I said this before, but I like that Eve was inquisitive. She asked a lot of questions. She was challenging authority. He did not like that. And you kind of see her recognize that he did not like that, and it made her shrink. And it made her become a monster, basically. Another thing that the very small members of the cult did, which I thought was fascinating, was they had no loyalty among themselves. Like, you know, sometimes when children are abused, like if there's an older sibling and there's a younger sibling, and the younger sibling does something that could get them beat up, but the older sibling's like, oh, no, I did it, and they take it for them. They are the exact opposite. They squealed on each other in a heartbeat, and then that other person got punished. And I'm like, y'all are all being abused, and you just turn on each other in a second. I was like, that is great. It's not great as far as their mental health, but it was great as far as character development and just like overall theme in the book. I found it fascinating when they did that. The book started off really well. Like the opening chapter is just like, whoa, this is gonna be good. And I had to keep going back to the opening chapter because this book is not told in order. It's back and forth, and we get different perspectives as it goes back and forth, which is also a sign of a more critical book. When you're reading a book that is told out of order, people who are choosing best books of the year, they tend to like those books better than a book that is told linearly. Just keep that in mind. So this book starts off at the end. Something has happened to the people. Somebody sees it. And then we find out what has happened as you read the story. And I like that a lot. I don't know if I'll read anything else by this woman. Her writing was a little try hard. Yeah. I do recommend it if you like a good thriller. Well, kind of good thriller. I won't say good, I'll say it was okay. If you like okay thrillers about cults, I recommend it. Next is Arch Conspirator or Arch Conspirator, I don't know, by Veronica Roth. This isn't even been published until 2023. I, for some reason, thought this was her next book because like she's at all the cons and all the book festivals and everything, and she's been like on Facebook and Twitter and everything, and I'm like, oh, she's got a new book coming out, but it's not coming out until January. Wrong. She has another book coming out in October called Poster Girl, and so that's why she's been out and about. So I actually read this book instead of Poster Girl. Just okay. So the Arch Conspirator is a retelling of Antigone. And if you do not know about Antigone, Antigone is Oedipus's daughter. And if you don't know Oedipus, you need to read it. It is by Sophocles. It is old as hell, but it is great. And I'm about to spoil it for you because this is one of my favorite books I read in English Lit in high school. So Oedipus is, when did he get this prophecy? I don't remember, but he has been told this, by the Sphinx. So there's a Sphinx who tells him a prophecy, and they're like, Oedipus, you're gonna kill your father and marry your mother. And he's like, bullshit. And so one day he's in his wagon and some shepherd comes along and he's like, excuse me, sir. And he's like, get out of my way, die. So he kills the shepherd and he goes back home to his wife and his 4 children, and he's like, hey, I killed the shepherd. Come to find out, the shepherd was his father, and he is married to his mother and has her children. He has children with her, and one of those children is Antigone, his daughter. And then Antigone has her own book, and in Antigone's story, I believe, okay, so in Antigone's story, in the real Antigone's story, Oedipus and his wife Jocasta, they're both dead, and Oedipus's brother Creon has decided to declare himself king, and he takes his children in with him, but they're all disgraced because they're like, their father is also their brother. It's gross. And he has basically told his son, Creon has told his son, that he has to marry Antigone. And he's like, ew, I don't want to. And she's like, ew, I don't want to. And he's like, we don't care. I don't care. You're going to do it. And then something happens and he kills, I think he kills both of them. But Creon's wife is like, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't kill your children for this one little infraction. And he's like, shut up, bitch. I'm doing it anyway. And then the people hate him. And then I think he dies. It's a tragedy. You know how it happens. They always die in the end. Okay, so in this story, they're not siblings. Like, Oedipus is not brother and father to his children. She's done something a little bit different. Oedipus and Jocasta, they are dead, and the 4 siblings have gone to live with Creon. We're in the new book now. And Creon has basically told Antigone, you need to marry my son. And she's like, ew, no. However, this book is set in the future, and it is not set on Earth. So that makes this book a little bit different. It's only 288 pages. It's very short. I gave it a 3.5. And I keep giving Veronica Roth chances because it's just like any day now she's gonna write a good book. And I know you're like, 3.5 is good. Not to me. 3.5 is not good to me. A 4 or higher is good to me. 3, anywhere in the 3 range is mediocre. And this book was mediocre. And here's why. For the most part, Veronica Roth has really good ideas, but her execution is terrible. And this book is no exception. So, one of the biggest problems with this book is that the writing is contrived. I can feel Veronica Roth trying to be a lyrical writer. I can feel it through the pages. It is seeping through the pages. It's just like begging, please, please think my book is lyrical and beautiful, please. Just tell your damn story and stop trying to be fancy. Just tell your story. If you are not a fancy writer, stop trying to be. Just tell your story. There are plenty of good stories that do not have quotey quotes. You know what I mean? Like, anyway, that was a problem. There were so many lines in there where I'm looking through my notes on my Kindle and I'm like, what does this mean? What is she trying to say? What? There's so many quotes, so many highlights where the note in it is like, what? What does this mean? I don't get it. It's like, oh my God, girl, just write your damn story. Problem number 1. Problem number 2 is that she is trying to do a lot in these 288 pages. She has introduced so many themes, but does nothing with it. So here's one thing that I didn't mention in my description. In this world, people cannot have babies naturally, meaning no egg, no sperm together, baby comes out. No, because I don't know what has happened and she doesn't explain, and that's fine. But at some point, something happened in the world where when women give birth naturally, they pass along a deadly, well, not deadly, they pass along a virus to the baby, which leaves the baby soulless. They don't have no soul. But there's no explanation of how that happened, when that happened, why that happened, nothing. Which is fine. You don't have to always give an origin story. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. Some people might. I don't. So Antigone and her siblings, her 3 siblings, were born naturally, and they are soulless. Therefore, they are the town pariah. Nobody wants to be near them. Nobody wants to befriend them. And Creon has taken them on because it's not because he's a good guy. It's because he's using them. And just like in the original, he is going to marry Antigone to his son, essentially. And I think it's just to keep the crown in their family. I think that's what it's for. Of course there's a reason why he's doing it, and I think that's it. Coffee break. That's a pretty interesting topic Natural born babies have no soul. And so how do people have babies in this world? Well, here's how. They have designer babies. So they go to this place up on top of some stairs, and people who die have given their DNA to this lab, and people go up to this place, to this lab, and they say, ooh, I like that person's eyes, I want those eyes, and I want that brain, and I want that ass, and I want that skin color, and blah. They just design a baby like The Sims, basically. But Veronica Roth doesn't really do anything with that topic. That's as far as it goes. We just see people having designer babies, but she has nothing else to say about that topic. Then there's a scene where there's a young girl who, whoopsies, has a baby naturally. She's pregnant through natural occurrences, and they're like, oh, sorry, men have decided that we can't do that. So once again, Veronica Roth is saying something about the hijacking of women's bodies by the government and by men, but she doesn't really say anything else about it. There's no further discussion about it. See? All the ideas, bad execution. That is her MO. Then we have the king's wife, who is a great character. She's barely on the page, but she is this saint of a woman. People see her walking down the street and they just love her. She's just loved. She was very smart when she was a young girl. She had such potential. Her mother basically used her because she was kind of an oracle. And she was like, go to hell, mom. I'm not gonna do that anymore. Like, she's a great character. Does nothing with her. Nothing. Another thing that Veronica Roth does in this book is she kind of sets up Antigone as the Mockingjay, basically Katniss. And she tries to, I should say. Doesn't do a really good job of it. She tries to. No. And it's rushed, and it's not done well. And the ending is totally different than the original Antigone, which I kind of ran down for you. It is totally different. A great idea. I don't know if there's going to be a book 2, because the way it ended, it was like, okay, what's gonna happen? You know, like I'm interested to know what's gonna happen, because it ended on a cliffhanger. So I don't know. I will probably read Poster Girl. I keep giving this woman chances. Why? What's the last book I read? I read 4. Liar's Crown, Arch Conspirator, Little Eve. I read something else, didn't I? The last book I read is Saint by Adrienne Young. This is a prequel to Fable and Namesake. Saint is about Fable's father. His name is Saint, but it is told when he was probably 18 or so, and basically how he came to be the man that we all loved. So it is about Fable's father and how he came to be the man that we all loved and kind of hated in Fable. I would say that if you have not read Fable, you could read this first, or you could read Fable first. It doesn't matter. There's no spoilers. Fable was published first, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the order that you read it, except I wouldn't read Namesake first. Obviously, that's book 2. But Fable, you could read Fable first, or you could read Saint first. It doesn't matter. Well, Saint is about Saint when he was an 18-year-old and how he met Isolde. I think that's her name, Fable's mother. Isolde, I was calling her Isolde. And the beginning of their love affair. And all the other characters in the book, Clove and Zola. Zoya is in Shadow and Bone. Wrong character. So did I say I give this book a 4? If not, I give it a 4. I give all Adrienne Young books a 4. I don't know why. Adrienne Young is a good writer. Is she a great writer? No. But she's a good writer. If you're one of those booktubers who are like, ew, YA, ugh. Adrian Young would be a good author I would tell you to read. Is it going to be the most critical book? No. Is it going to be entertaining and enjoyable? Yes. She always has very strong heroines, really good romances, strong themes, and her books are almost always, well, except for this one, about a girl. But even when a female is, well, this book is dual POV, so it's Isolde and Saint, but Saint is on the cover. But like, her books are always succinct. They're never too long. They never drag ass. The plot moves fairly well. The character development is always usually done well. There's always a pretty good villain. Like her books are almost always pretty good. Are they great? No. And that's my only thing with her. She is this close to being a fabulous writer. This close. If her writing was just elevated a little bit, just a little bit, she could be up there with, like, I'm not gonna say Sarah J. Maas, because Sarah writes epic books and she's kind of cornered the fae market, and Adrian Young doesn't do fae or anything like that. And she doesn't write epic books. She usually writes duologies, which is also a great thing. She only writes she usually writes duologies. I don't know, I can't think of an author right now off the top of my head that she's comparable to, or she could be. I just can't think of one. But what I'm saying is that if you want a really good, solid YA fantasy, read an Adrian Young book. It doesn't matter which one. They're all good. They're all pretty good. So just read her books. But back to Saint. Okay, what I liked about it is all the things that I said. All the things I like about Adrian Young's books. She has very strong heroines. And they don't make these dumbass mistakes that all these other heroines make. Yes, teenagers make mistakes. I get that. They have to be flawed in some way. And Isolde does make some mistakes, but her characters are never assholes and bitchy for no reason. They're not entitled. Like, some of these characters that we see in this book, no, some characters that I see in YA books, the main character is always like, do what I say because I said so. And it's like, that's not how the world works. Like, they always make these dumb mistakes in the name of some dude. It's like, her characters never do that. The main guy is always, well, he's always a good guy. Like, she never has assholes. And she doesn't have the misunderstood guy, or my daddy beat me, that's why I'm an asshole. Like, it's never that guy. It's never the guy who is mean to the girl because, oh, my life is a mess and I don't want you anywhere in the middle of it because it's gonna taint you, therefore I treat you like a piece of shit. It's never that. It's just a guy who's got some issues, but he's still nice. He's still nice. You know those Hallmark guys and those Hallmark movies? They're just nice guys. And sometimes you just want to read a nice guy. Is it realistic? Not necessarily, but it's nice. It's a nice break to just read a good guy. And that's what Adrian Young does. She writes good guys. Her books, once again, are always quite thematic. It's usually, you know, fighting the patriarchy, found family, standing up on your own 2 feet, you know, independence, which is the same thing that I just said. But her themes are usually pretty good. Her villains are okay. Like, I wouldn't say that her villain skills are the best, especially not Namesake. But if you read Fable, there's a character, Zola. Zola is the main villain in Fable and Namesake. And we see Zola as a teenager or a younger man, and you get to understand him a little bit better. So I kind of wish that I read Saint first and then Fable, because then I would have understood the Zola character a little bit better. But I mean, other than that, that didn't make or break the book or anything like that. It's just something that I wish Zola had been better developed in Fable. I think in Namesake he was better, but yeah, I have no dislikes for Saint. I liked everything about it. It's just not as great as it could be. Like, Adrienne Young's writing isn't as rich as what I prefer my 5 or 4.5 stars to be. Her writing is very, and when I say YA, I mean it's palatable for a young teen. There's not any huge vocabulary. There are no big major quotey quotes in the book. It's just writing that is great for a teenager. There's nothing wrong with that, but I like a little bit more. I like my writing to be a little deeper, you know what I mean? For me to give it a higher rating. Her themes are good. They're also kind of very obvious. Once again, usually when you have a pirate book, the obvious theme is going to be found family. This book is no exception. But I like there to be other themes that are not surface level, themes that you have to really like look for and discover as you read in between the lines. She doesn't really do that. Very on the nose themes. Once again, that's good. It is not great. But yeah, I highly recommend Saint. I highly recommend Adrienne Young's books. All of her books have been great. I think I've read almost all of them. And if not all, most of them. And when I say most, I mean 90% of them. I've given a 4-star. And I criticize everything. I don't like anything. And so for me to give a 4-star book is rare. Thank you for joining me on my ARC journey. I will be reading some more ARCs. I got some more books. I got all my books from Edelweiss, if you were wondering. That is a website comparable to NetGalley. I don't know if it's open to non-professionals, non-book professionals. I am not sure. But if it is, run, because they don't judge you like NetGalley. They don't give you a grade. They just say, hey, here's some ebooks. Read them. Thank you. They don't yell at you if you didn't review them. All right. Thank you for joining me, and I will catch you in the next book review. Bye-bye.